We're going to talk a bit about biodiversity generally, and we'll talk a bit later on about the great collaboration. Everybody who's involved in climate and biodiversity and environmental matters has a sort of road to Damascus moment that they can talk about when they say, right, I decided to do something about this. And mine was about 2.5 years ago. I got in touch with the National Association in England, NALC, and so I've been working with them in their climate emergency network. And shortly after that, SLCC advertised their environmental sustainability advisor post. So 5 hours a week, I'm working with SLCC. So I've got connections with both organisations. I have been in touch with One Voice Wales recently, and to talk about how we can make connections there. Of course, the Society of Local Council Clerks covers England and Wales, but it'd be good to be working with One Voice Wales as well. So watch this space. So let's see. We'll go through the presentation just now. We've had the survey. Thank you very much for the replies on the survey. And obviously there are things about biodiversity itself, which I'm glad that we've got in our own presentation today. So I was a clerk for 8 years, but I didn't realize that actually in England we had a biodiversity duty since 2006. Nobody told me. But it's now been reissued and supported by the 2021 Environment Act. So there's some links up here. You'll see here we are. There's a sort of footnotes at the end of this show, and there's a copy of this presentation will be shared after today, so you don't have to frantically write notes about all of this. So the biodiversity there is the link to the UK government's guidance when the new biodiversity duty came into force last year. So this is just some advice for councils. This is general stuff. What are we already doing to conserve and enhance biodiversity? We may be doing some things already in terms of being careful about our mowing and supporting our various sites without necessarily making a fuss about it. The parish and town councils in England aren't expected to produce a formal report, not at that level of government. I believe Welsh community councils have to do a biennial report. By the way, if anybody from Wales here would like to bring me up to date on any Welsh matters, that would be great to know. So other local authorities and parishes will have nature recovery plans and biodiversity things, so we don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel. There's a link to having a biodiversity policy. We're both now in SLCC, we worked up a model biodiversity policy, which is available on that link, which looks at, in general terms, policy terms, what to do, but also has a model action plan at the back, which is a sort of pick and mix thing, things we might do, things we might not do. And so that link is there, and a number of people are finding that quite useful. You will find, of course, in every area, there will be voluntary groups already working on nature conservation, wildlife, and so forth. Sometimes people come up when there's planning applications at council meetings, and they have very strong things to say about them. Those people are worth keeping in touch with because they are very much on this agenda. So we can make a connection with our communities and our residents doing on this. We see from this poll, some of us already carry out a biodiversity audit of our land holdings, so we know what we're doing, know what there is that we have to protect. I'll explain a bit more about the extra value of that when we get to Biodiversity Net Gain in a short while. But that's a handy bit. And then there's also some links, some guidance about how we might do that, because I think I was sick the day they did biodiversity at school. I'm not very clever with wildlife habitats, but there are ways that we can pick up on that, even though we're not necessarily experts ourselves. And get expert advice in as possible action. Some of it we may find from our own council areas. There may be some people in our parish and town community council areas that are very hot on this, and we haven't met them yet. So that's handy. And then we can get into having an action plan, nature recovery plan, whatever you want to call it. And we can include in that what we're doing, but also as councils, but also what's happening locally, because it'd be good to have a comprehensive joined up approach. And it was good to see some of us already doing that with our local people. The picture on the right is actually a guidance for town and parish councils on local nature action plans produced by South Gloucestershire Unitary Authority. And they're actually very closely working with their town and parish councils in that area. And they have produced that particularly for our sector. So there's a link to that later in the talk as well. So that's just a general run through about biodiversity. It's important in England, it's important in Wales, and they're also doing it in Scotland, pretty much on the same sort of time frame. So, okay, Biodiversity Net Gain. There is a new summary of this, which has just been published open source on the SLCC website. You'll see this is got a link to it, that link straight through it. That's sort of fairly hot off the presses. Biodiversity Net Gain has really come into England from April. So it's all pretty new. So we're looking at things as we're starting up and looking to gather good practice as we go forward. So the principle is to enhance biodiversity. This is something that came in again with the Environment Act 2021. It's intended to ensure habitats are measurably in better state. So the measurably bit is important. The government has produced a metric for measuring biodiversity on site. And so that's the work has already been done. So that's available. And this is something that developers are supposed to use when they're putting forward their planning applications in England. So there is the tool there for them to make sure that it can be measurably improved, and all qualifying planning applications in England required to show at least 10% biodiversity net gain. So that is the thing off the top of the hill, top of the story. It's come in since April, so these are still relatively early days, but there we go. So this is biodiversity gain is particularly for England. In terms of Wales, the Welsh government. Wales has been ahead of England in a number of ways in this agenda, not least with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which came in 2015, which requires all local authorities to think about the future of their communities in very clear ways, and to ways of managing that and keeping in touch with that. With people who are trying to put that in for the whole of the UK in the last government, had to come in as a private member's bill for the whole of the UK, but of course it ran out of time. When the Parliament and government came to a close, so hopefully that will come back again. So Welsh government is certainly improving, approaching biodiversity, clear about biodiversity. There was a consultation about it in May 2023 about it. I haven't been able to understand whether there's been any result from that particular consultation yet. Again, if anybody from Wales knows any, can update us about that. The last I heard was there hadn't been an actual response to the consultation as yet. But biodiversity very much an issue in both nations. Okay, so looking at England again, biodiversity net gain. Who's it for? It's for any dwelling application for a single dwelling or more. Okay, it doesn't apply to housing extensions. So if you're just extending your house, you haven't got to show biodiversity net gain in your patch. But if there's new housing, it definitely has to be there. If there's commercial development of a certain size, then that also has to show biodiversity net gain. In other words, better than 10% increase of biodiversity on site. Minerals or waste-related development, the same. The one that doesn't apply to yet, nationally significant infrastructure projects. We've already had HS2 mentioned. Let's have a quiet boo and hiss around the room. That's been, I've got links with, some unfortunate links with that project through working in Warwickshire for a while. So at the moment, national significant infrastructure projects don't have to show biodiversity net gain, but some people say it'd be November this year, some would be early next year. What that means is if we have such a project in our parish and town council, we have to be particularly hot on it because they're not obliged to do this net gain business. So let's be tough on them until such time as they do have to do it. So that's just a little not in our hankies there. Okay. So there's a guidance here. This is what the UK government has published in terms of what planning authorities should do. And this next couple of slides are drawn from that guidance. So when a developer puts in an application, as you can see, it's practically every application that has to come in these days. And of course, as local councils, we get to look at these applications. We don't get to decide them. We do get to say about them. So each application has to say, is biodiversity net gain applicable to their patch? They have to admit that. They have to calculate the biodiversity value of the site as it is. We're told about there is a government-based metric provided for doing that. They have to describe any irreplaceable habitat, in other words, stuff that they're planning to take out, which will actually not be then recovered. So they have to say that. And they have to provide a habitat plan of the whole site. So this is with every application. Okay. So what do? So if they think they haven't got, they think biodiversity net gain isn't applicable, well, why not? You know, are they clear about that? Have they got that wrong? Are they trying to get out of something? What about the biodiversity value of the site? Have they missed something? Have they not actually valued something which they should have spotted? That's something that, again, going back to our local contacts, people in our council area who are experts in this, maybe we can get some people to help us look at those sorts of things. We're going to take out an irreplaceable habitat. Oh, really? Is there really no alternative to taking that out? You know, let's really press them on that point, because as we're beginning to know more and more across the UK, biodiversity habitats are absolutely vital, not just for insects, not just for other animals and plants, but for human beings as well. It's very much the basis of the whole ecosystems in the whole planet. So we have to get these things done. So we need to be knowing about things. We're going to lose things forever. I'm told we've lost an awful number of the species of the UK species over the last several decades. We don't want to lose any more. And finally, the habitat plan. Is it accurate? Have they got it right? Have they missed something? You know. So those are things that we can be looking at. Okay. So they also have to put in the biodiversity net gain plan. Okay. There is a template for that provided by the government, but it's not mandatory. So sadly, it won't always be in the same format, which is not very helpful. But anyway, they have to produce a plan of some sort. So what are they going to say? They need to say to what extent the gains are provided on-site or off-site. Now, clearly, we would prefer, if they're going to develop a site and you want to improve the biodiversity on the site, we'd like the improvements to be on the site as well. But fortunately or unfortunately, probably more unfortunately, people can say, oh, well, we won't do it on site, we'll do it somewhere else. So we'll have biodiversity credits, so-called, so we can say we won't do it on site, we're going to cover it to concrete and tarmac, sorry, but you know, we will do something good for this off-site. So they need to show a habitat management plan for on-site, stuff they're doing on-site, so we can have a look at that, get our experts to look at that. And we'll also look at what they have to do off-site. Now, we may be thinking, hang about, what about these big housing firms who are doing development all over the place? Will they be able to use the same off-site for every biodiversity net gain get out of jail? Apparently not. The government is having a database of people who have sites that have already been claimed for biodiversity net gain, so that people can't keep claiming the same price. So somebody's government has thought of that little wrinkle. Anyway, the other thing about off-site gain is it won't necessarily be in your parish, won't even necessarily be in the planning authority's area. Unless the planning authority is supposed to monitor these things for up to 30 years, if it's not in their planning authority area, then there is a danger, shall we say, that it's going to be less closely monitored. So there are things about off-site biodiversity gain that we're worried about. So some early words of caution. Are we surprised some developers already claim there's no biodiversity on site? Oh yeah. Probably a lot of us have got experience of like waking up on a Monday morning. Oh, sorry, Gov, I didn't realise I wasn't allowed to cut down that community orchard over the weekend. You know, there have been occasions, of course, where and there may be more occasions where developers somehow blitz a site and then say there's no biodiversity on site. Fortunately, the government's thought of that as well, and we can go back. I think it's as far as February this year to see what state the thing was in. So if somebody's blitzed the site, they can still be a discussion about, well, let's talk about 10% on top of what was there before you actually raise the whole place to the ground. This is all early days. We haven't had too much practice on this. Again, there'll be more information about this as soon as we get more case examples coming forward. Some other things to be leery of. Some people may say, oh, it's all right, we're putting in 30 gardens and the extra biodiversity will come in on those household gardens. Well, fine, but how are we going to insist that those new householders honour that agreement and produce biodiversity, maintain biodiversity in that garden? So a little bit leery of that suggestion. I've mentioned about biodiversity credits. Let's have a look at our site. This is going back to the biodiversity audit of our own patches. Let's look at what's in our area. Let's look at what's on development sites. We know an idea which those are from the local plan. What about the sites that are nearby or in our parish or town or county community council area, which aren't on development sites, but could still do us a bit of help in terms of biodiversity support? Let's get our own list of sites, for off-sites for improvement. Let's make sure that our local planning authority knows about them, and so that we can do our level best to make sure that any off-site in biodiversity net gain happens at least within our parish area. Last but not least, the biodiversity net gains are usually only agreed after planning permission has been given. And as local councils, we're not usually involved in that discussion. So if we want to say anything about the draft net gain plans as provides, let's get in there early and let's get in our points in early. So because it's always a danger that things are then get disagreed after planning permission has been given and we don't get a look in. So those are little words of caution there to be aware of. So keep alert on this. This is new. This is a new requirement. In effect, it's a new responsibility. on parish and town councils in England, and we're busy to ramp up to how we can deal with this. But of course, I don't have to tell this audience how important this all is. Okay, so what else can we do about it in advance? Let's say contact our existing wildlife and conservation groups. Let's get them engaged so that they know what we're about and we can be in touch with them as and when we need. In England, we have an annual parish meeting every year. What a great opportunity to give these groups a stand. So they come into a lot of you may be doing this already. Let's have local groups in, British Legion, bowling clubs, other clubs, but wildlife and conservation groups as well. Let's get them to say what they have about them. We can all meet them. They can talk about what they're doing and so forth. Yes, we can have special talks in by different people. Some people are very, very great talkers. Where I live in the Forest of Dean, we've got wild boar running around in the Forest of Dean, as many of you may know. Had a talk from somebody who'd studied them, the history of it. It was fascinating. She knew so many things about wild boar. She was really engrossed in the topic. She was a great speaker as well. So let's get some speakers in. BioBlitz. Now, this is for those of us that are not habitat experts. A BioBlitz is a sort of community-based exercise where you can go on a patch, have some and actually note down what wildlife and habitats we find. You can see people there looking at stuff online. They're looking in a book and they can do that. It's a great way of involving people. There's also great support to let us know more about our patch and where the things are, what's going on, and what habitats we really need to treasure. So the results of the BioBlitz, any other planning considerations, any other feedback from members of the community, maybe we should have an area map for our council area and start plotting biodiversity and habitat issues on that map. That then is a reference tool for when we're looking at planning applications and other matters. So there's some things that we can do in advance already around this issue of biodiversity net gain. Okay. There is some, just because we're looking at biodiversity in the first place, there's lots of advice we can get on biodiversity. I've mentioned the Nature Recovery Plan. One of the things that we may have all heard of, this idea about no mow May. We've got wildflowers coming up, supporting pollinated insects. There's a nice picture of a bumblebee there. Let's think about even on sport fields. Some of us may have playing fields. Let's not necessarily mow the whole area. Let's leave some parts of it for this purposes. I've put April in brackets there because we may have noticed this year season seems to come forward a bit. And I had one parish council ring me and saying we'd fixed with our contractors to mow in April, but sadly that's when the flowers were coming up, and of course they blitzed the load of them. So let's be thinking a bit more careful about that. It may be no mow April as opposed to no mow May. So that's just a word of thinking about that. It also means that there is guidance on this. How do we tell our contractors what guidance do we give them about what they do? And in the model biodiversity policy I mentioned, there is some ideas about that at the back of that report. What about only mowing once a year anyway? Maybe then we can rotation and mow some bits one year and not another. These are other things about this. Good for hibernating insects, ground neck birds, maybe mowing in August, September after seeding it. Now there are these considerations to have. So it's really looking again, those that we don't all have grassland site. Grassland, by the way, is a great source of biodiversity. There's more biodiversity in grassland than there is in woodland. I learned that a few years ago. So this is strange but true. So grassland is actually amazingly important to what the things we're being concerned about. So that's another consideration. Worried about artificial fertilizers. Don't get people started on these or rubber, all weather surfaces, because those are not much good for the environment either. But let's be careful about fertilizers. What about more trees and hedges? Some trees, we can't just plant trees anywhere. Trees, of course, are the only things we know that really take carbon out of the atmosphere. Grassland does the same, apparently. So we can be thinking about more planting. There's some guidance in the notes about which trees we might plant on which soil and so forth. It's not just about planting trees per se. And what about alternatives to pesticides, where we need to go things about? There's more advice of these available from other sources. If people haven't found access to these advices and need some more guidance, I see some questions already coming in the chat. I'll be delighted to get back to as much as I can about some of those points. Okay, we can't do it all on our own. One of the issues here, we've already got biodiversity net gain in England. We're looking at other things to do with climate and environment. We've seen from our survey that some of us are managing to get working with our community already and having a joint action plan. But as I know, parish clerks are very busy types. We've got a lot of things on our desks. Councillors are very occupied as well. And it's important to bring in the community as anyway. We're doing things for the future of our communities, for the benefit of the whole society in our area. And let's get more people involved. This is actually a picture from employees at a particular business that we're actually going out and doing a working day together. And the footnote there is some guidance to some advice on how we can actually reach out to our communities. There are techniques for it. There's ways of doing it. One of the things about it is how we tell them. You know, we need to be saying this is actually about the future of our people, not just mankind generally, but future of our community and our society. There are good reasons for doing things. There are good reasons for having new allotments. I think I'll get the same known of being Mr. Allotments. Let's grow more of our own food. We're healthier, we get out more often, we meet more people, and we're buying less packaged stuff from overseas and shops. So there are other, what they call co-benefits for doing different things. It's not just about, clearing areas. Clearing rights of way, very good to encourage active travel and people using their feet and motorbike, bicycles more. So that's the last word on that. So here's the footnotes, the model biodiversity policy, the action plan field guide for people who, like me, are not very expert on wildlife and habitats discussion. There's things about committees and working groups. I see some of us already got joint working groups with our community. There are some sample links to some sample terms of reference there. In England, if you're a subcommittee, you have to follow standing orders, but you can actually recommend, some funding to the main full council. Working groups, a bit more informal, don't have that, but can actually perhaps possibly work more easily. Environmental planning guide is more about all the different ways we can think about the environment in the work we do as local councils. It's quite a broad thing. Wider commenting on planning applications is there. How to plant a tree, I've mentioned from the Woodland Trust. And there's some contact details down below. And so I put my contact details in the chat at the top of the chat as well. Okay, so that was that talk. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Great Collaboration now. The Great Collaboration is something that started in Herefordshire. It actually came out of a small parish council, Fownhope, in Herefordshire. And it was an idea about getting people together with their communities, local councils and communities working together. So the website is currently there, which has about 60 different actions on it that people can do as individuals. People who log into that, and it's been operating in Herefordshire for a couple of years, and say what they're doing or what they would like to do or what they can't do. And then local councils can then interrogate the website. They don't get to know the names of the people and say, oh, right, there's 8 people in our parish and they can't get on their feet because the rights of ways are all choked up, for example, or there's some other issue. So they can find out about it. And there's some other guidance for town and parish councils there as well. So we're busy extending that. We've taken that over from Herefordshire. Herefordshire Green Network operated it, but they didn't have the capacity to spread it nationally. It already can work nationally, but they didn't have the capacity to take it forward. So there's the website. So we set up last August the Place-Based Initiative Limited, which is from people from both the NOUT Climate Emergency Network and from SLCC contacts on the board. And so we're looking at it to implore more good climate action practice for towns and parish councils, more collective actions to add to the individual actions that are there. There's going to be online mapping there of what's happening in different parts of the country. There's going to be greater links to guidance. We're not rewriting the whole canon of guidance. If something's already been published, we don't need to rewrite it at all, just provide links to it. It's about joining up so that stuff that's happening in one part of the nation, which is good practice, can be shared elsewhere. In the meantime, what we've already started are these weekly banter sessions. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And this is about a range of topics, a range of expert presentations. They're good natured discussions, very much similar format to the one we're enjoying today. You can get in touch with that to find out what's going on, to join in. And if you would like to make a presentation and talk about things that are especially happening in your area or some particular advice you'd like to share, Graham, who's the chairman of that session, will be very pleased to hear it. So there's the link to that, which I say is also in the chat. So the last plea is about, we need to work with people because there's a group of us doing this great collaboration, but obviously if we can't do it on our own, we need more people to be engaged as well. So if people would like to get involved in this effort, really it's a national effort. We're starting a pilot in East Anglia. For example, at the moment, Suffolk, Norfolk, Essex and Cambridgeshire, that's coming up very shortly. That's where we're starting to roll it out in more detail first. We're looking out to roll it out more detail across the whole of England. As I said, already in touch with One Voice Wales to see how we might connect and roll things out in Wales as well. So if we need new guidance, good practice, people who like to help on the content and sharing stuff with that, either their own ideas or other people's ideas, in touch. Digital mapping, we're working with Parish Online, which some of us may know as a digital mapping facility, which is available from a firm called Geosphere. They're working with us. They're keen to support this exercise and improve their stuff, as well as providing a service to town and parish councils. So there's an involvement there. And if people have got a particular expertise, a particular idea of action, they want to come and be the connection for that, to look at things and ideas that come in. Sometimes we get case studies that come in and they're great. They say, oh, look what we've done. And here's the picture of the ribbon cutting and so and so and so. They don't always include clear steps as to how you can repeat that success somewhere else. So sometimes we get some case studies in which are great, but they just need a bit of embellishing so that they can be used as templates for other people to work on. So, and of course, we need to get the word out on the street. We're collecting links as well as being in touch with all the associations of local councils. There are obviously green networks around the nation as well, and so we're collecting links to those as well as through other things. And so there's a whole communication road. It's the way you tell them, as the Irish comedian used to say. Communication at this stage is probably the single most important thing. So people would like to get involved in that. There's our email contact, and that's also in the chat. So the more of us, we're starting this process. It's about joining up. It's about improving the future for everybody in the UK. We're starting at East Anglia, and we are spreading over the whole nation. So we're looking forward to hearing more about you. It doesn't matter where you are, England or Wales. It'd be great to hear from you.